My fingers trembled as I gazed into the empty cavity of the safe, the stark reality of what had transpired slowly setting in. My name is Lisa Bennett, a 36-year-old mother, navigating the complexities of life 3 years post-divorce. My sole focus had been accumulating every spare dollar for my daughter Sophia's future education. Hosting a family gathering at my modest suburban residence had seemed like a positive step, an opportunity to reconnect, forge new memories, and perhaps validate for myself and others that life, post-split, was manageable. But now, standing in my bedroom, the safe door ajar, and the meticulously saved $5,000 in cash vanished. Manageable felt like a distant fantasy. My thoughts immediately zeroed in on Mark, my sister Emily's husband. A persistent sense of unease had always shadowed my interactions with him. There was a lingering possessiveness in his gaze when he surveyed my belongings, a casual, almost probing interest in my financial state, always accompanied by that condescending smirk. After everyone had departed, leaving only Emily and Mark, the missing money became apparent. I confronted him directly in the living room. His response was dripping with feigned outrage, asking if I was serious in my accusation, before erupting into laughter. He suggested I might have simply misplaced it, remarking on my perceived lack of financial acumen and linking it cruelly to my divorce. The sheer arrogance of his laughter, his absolute certainty of impunity, ignited a furious resolve within me. What he couldn't grasp was that his smug facade was about to crumble, and the look on his face when truth arrived would be indelibly etched in my memory. Emily and I shared a bond closer than typical siblings, separated by just 18 months. We were practically twins in our youth, sharing clothes, secrets, and aspirations. Our adult lives continued this closeness, marked by almost daily calls. Everything shifted when Mark Davis entered her life 3 years prior, met at her accounting firm's holiday party. His presence altered the dynamic between us. Initially, I strove for supportiveness. Emily seemed genuinely happy, and having experienced the dissolution of my own marriage, I wished nothing more than enduring happiness for my sister. Yet, Mark always stirred something unsettling within me. To the outside world, he presented as the epitome of charm, success, and articulation, an ideal partner for my bright, beautiful sister. But in unguarded moments, I witnessed a different Mark. The way he would speak disdainfully to restaurant staff over minor imperfections. The subtly barbed remarks about Emily's appearance disguised as helpful advice, and most notably, his interaction with me, marked by a barely hidden condescension that diminished my sense of self-worth. At family functions, he'd inquire about my job search progress, fully aware of my challenges in rebuilding my career after prioritizing motherhood during my marriage to John. The divorce had left me financially vulnerable. John had been the primary earner, and while child support offered some stability, I juggled 2 jobs to maintain a secure environment for Sophia. The $5,000 represented months of extra shifts at the local coffee shop and freelance graphic design projects, squeezed in after Sophia was asleep. This sum was specifically designated for Sophia's college application fees, campus visits, and her initial expenses as a freshman. Mark was privy to this, as I had proudly mentioned my savings milestone at a family dinner the previous month. Despite my difficult circumstances, I vividly recalled his reaction, a blend of disbelief and something else I couldn't decipher at the time, something I now recognized as cold calculation. Over the years, Mark had peppered me with small financial digs. He'd ostentatiously offer to lend money for Sophia's birthday gifts in front of my parents, comment on my practical, which meant inexpensive clothing choices, or propose investment strategies requiring capital I clearly lacked. Each comment was delivered with that familiar smirk, framing my post-divorce financial struggles as a personal failing, rather than the arduous process of rebuilding a life after 15 years of marriage. The truth was that $5,000 symbolized my independence and a solemn promise to my daughter that her future was paramount. Now it was gone, likely taken by a man who had abundance, yet couldn't resist taking from someone who had so little to spare. Weeks went into meticulously planning the family reunion, a determined effort to make it flawless, despite my limited financial means. This would be the inaugural gathering hosted at my new residence, a modest 3-bedroom home I'd purchased the previous year after finally accumulating enough for a down payment. My aim was to demonstrate to everyone, particularly my parents, that the divorce hadn't broken me. The menu was orchestrated with near military precision. Impressive looking, yet affordable homemade appetizers. A potluck main course strategically assigned to capitalize on everyone's culinary strengths. And desserts I'd personally baked over 3 late nights. I deep cleaned every corner, bought fresh flowers on sale, and even tackled painting the guest bathroom to conceal peeling wallpaper I couldn't afford to replace. The night before, I had checked the money in my safe, running my fingers over the stacks of bills, representing months of extra work and personal sacrifices. The safe itself was unassuming, a basic fireproof box with a combination lock, tucked away in my bedroom closet behind shoes and seasonal clothing. It wasn't concealed out of fear of family theft, but rather a touch of embarrassment about keeping cash outside a bank. However, after my accounts were temporarily frozen during the divorce due to John's legal maneuvers, leaving me unable to even buy groceries, I had vowed to always keep emergency funds accessible. The reunion unfolded better than I could have hoped. My parents were the first to arrive, my mother instinctively taking charge in the kitchen, while my father settled in to watch a baseball game with Sophia. My brother James, his wife, and their twin boys followed, then cousins and aunts and uncles from both sides. Emily and Mark made a characteristically late entrance, Mark immediately commenting on the quaint neighborhood as if expressing surprise I didn't reside somewhere less desirable. Around 25 people eventually filled my home with lively conversation, laughter, and the comfortable chaos unique to family gatherings. Throughout the day, I noticed Mark periodically withdrawing from the main group. Initially, I dismissed it. People need privacy for calls or bathroom breaks. But around 4 p.m., heading towards my bedroom for more hand towels, I encountered Mark emerging from that direction. He smoothly claimed he was looking for the bathroom, despite a guest bathroom being much closer to the main living area. I simply nodded, pointing him towards the correct one, a faint flicker of unease disturbing my composure. The feeling was quickly overshadowed by hosting demands. A nephew's spilled punch, an aunt needing serving spoons, and the moment faded into the background. Looking back, other subtle warnings went unnoticed. Mark's unusually specific questions about my home security system during dinner, his curious eagerness to help clear items near my bedroom, and his consistent attempts to steer conversations toward finance and investments whenever we spoke. But immersed in the role of hostess, surrounded by family, these registered merely as minor annoyances, rather than the significant red flags they truly were. The party gradually dispersed around 9 p.m. A flurry of farewell hugs, promises of future gatherings, and armloads of leftover containers I insisted people take. Only Emily and Mark remained, helping me stack the last of the dishes and fold the borrowed chairs. Emily, ever the considerate sister, offered to stay and finish cleaning, but I assured her I was fine and thanked them both for their help. Mark seemed notably impatient to depart, repeatedly checking his watch and mentioning an early appointment. As they gathered their belongings, I recalled promising Emily some old photos I'd unearthed. "Let me just grab those pictures from my room," I said, heading down the hall. It was a habit ingrained by years of single parenthood, a quiet check on valuables after guests departed, not from distrust, but for peace of mind. Almost automatically, I opened my closet door, brushed aside the sweaters, and reached for the safe. The combination clicked. The door swung open as usual, but my heart plummeted. The envelope holding my $5,000 was gone. I frantically searched behind, under the safe, rifled through everything else in the closet, desperately hoping I'd moved it and forgotten. The increasingly frantic search yielded only the chilling confirmation. The money was gone. My hands trembling, I returned to the living room where Emily was assisting Mark with his jacket. "The money's gone," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Emily turned, confusion clouding her face. "What money, Lisa?" "The $5,000 I saved for Sophia's college fund. It was in my safe, and it's vanished." My gaze was fixed directly on Mark, his expression shifting from feigned bewilderment to something else entirely. He responded with the same mocking indignation as before, challenging my accusation and then bursting into laughter. Cruel reminders of my financial struggles and the end of my marriage woven into his words. Emily looked caught, suspended between her sister and her husband. She suggested I might have simply moved it for safety before the party. But I shook my head, the initial shock dissolving into righteous anger. I told her I'd checked it just the night before. It was there then, and now it wasn't. Mark's laugh intensified. "So naturally, your first thought is that I stole it? Wow, Lisa, just wow." He turned to Emily, urging her to leave, suggesting I had issues to resolve. Emily hesitated, torn, squeezing my arm softly before following Mark out the door, promising to call me tomorrow. The moment they were gone, I tore through the house, a desperate search for any sign of the money. Under mattresses, in drawers, between books, even in the freezer. By midnight, I sat exhausted on my bedroom floor amidst scattered belongings, absolute certainty settling in. My money was gone, and Mark Davis had taken it. Sleep offered little respite, my mind replaying the day, fixated on how and when Mark could have accessed the safe, how he even knew the combination. Then, a memory surfaced. Last Christmas, showing off a new jewelry box from my parents, I'd mentioned using the same combination as my safe to make it easy to remember. Mark had been right there, listening intently, while others were distracted by holiday chatter. The next morning, after Sophia left for school, I called Emily. My hands still shook, but my resolve was firm. Emily answered cautiously. I took a deep breath and told her the money was definitely gone, that it hadn't just disappeared on its own. A long pause followed before she spoke, her voice defensively asking if I was still suggesting Mark took it. My heart sank at her tone. I calmly explained I had checked the safe just before the party, that only family had been in the house, and Mark was the only one I'd seen near my bedroom. Emily's voice hardened, accusing me of baseless accusations against her husband, simply because he walked down a hallway. I closed my eyes, trying to maintain composure, telling her I knew how it sounded, but she didn't understand. She interrupted, arguing that Mark, a high-earning finance professional, would have no reason to steal my modest sum. I heard murmuring in the background, then Emily announcing, "Mark wants to talk to you." Before I could object, Mark's smooth, condescending voice filled the line. He feigned understanding of my financial difficulties, but accused me of projecting my problems onto others. I gripped the phone tightly, asserting that I wasn't projecting, that I knew what had been in my safe. He chuckled cruelly, suggesting I might have spent the money and forgotten, or that stress was playing tricks on my memory. I adamantly denied forgetting anything, though a sliver of doubt had begun to form. Had I moved it? Was I so exhausted I had done something with the money I couldn't recall? Mark continued, his voice now dripping with mock concern, suggesting I consider professional help given my supposed financial problems, the divorce, and now these paranoid and accusatory tendencies. The implication of mental instability stung. I retorted that I didn't need a therapist. I needed Sophia's college fund back. He stiffly reiterated his denial and expressed his and Emily's displeasure with my accusations, suggesting I cool off and think more clearly. Perhaps the money would reappear. After hanging up, doubt gnawed at me as I sat at the kitchen table. Was I overreacting? Could I have misremembered? I tried to visualize the money in the envelope, confirming the memory. No, I hadn't imagined it. The money was real, and it was gone. Thoughts of Sophia, her excitement about college visits, planned for the next month, flooded me. We had planned a road trip to 5 campuses. Expenses meant to be covered by that money. Now I faced telling her we couldn't go. Or worse, relying on credit cards I was already struggling with. As the initial shock receded, something hardened within me. Mark might possess money, status, and my sister's loyalty, but I held the truth, and I would find a way to prove it. That afternoon, I decided on a systematic approach. If Mark believed he could gaslight me into dropping this, he underestimated my determination. First, I checked my home security system. Basic cameras installed 6 months prior for peace of mind as a single woman. Frustratingly, the system was offline during the crucial window of 2:00 p.m. to 6:00 p.m. The timing felt too deliberate to be accidental. Had Mark disabled it, that would require technical knowledge and premeditated planning, suggesting a calculated theft, not an opportunistic one. Next, I compiled a list of reunion attendees and their movements, recalling what I could. I started making casual calls, ostensibly thank yous, but subtly probing for unusual observations. My cousin Rachel mentioned looking for Mark for investment advice and being unable to find him for nearly 20 minutes. Emily claimed he was in the bathroom, but Rachel felt that was an excessive amount of time. My mother shared another piece of the puzzle. Before the reunion, Mark had asked her peculiar questions about my financial recovery post-divorce and whether I kept cash at home because of the bank incident. She had assumed he was simply concerned. My suspicions solidified with each call. That evening, I scoured social media photos posted by relatives. Pictures taken between 3:30 p.m. and 4:15 p.m. showed Mark conspicuously absent, even during the main meal. I also noticed a subtle detail in a kitchen background shot, the small ceramic bowl holding spare keys, including my bedroom door key, seemed slightly out of place. The following morning, I contacted the one person I knew would trust me implicitly, my ex-husband, John. Despite our divorce, we maintained a civil relationship for Sophia's well-being, and he possessed a pragmatic problem-solving ability. I explained the theft and my certainty about Mark, struggling to keep my voice steady. Unlike everyone else, John didn't question my conviction. He immediately recognized Mark by my description, his easy understanding bringing unexpected tears. I told him I needed evidence to prove it. After a brief silence, John suggested I talk to my brother James, a police officer in a nearby district. I had initially hesitated to involve him, fearing further family division. But John was right. This was no longer just about money, but a deliberate act of harm directed at me, and by extension, Sophia. When I called James and recounted the events, he listened with professional objectivity but personal support. While he couldn't officially investigate due to jurisdiction and family ties, he offered guidance on gathering evidence correctly. Over the next few days, with James and John's help, I built a stronger case. I discovered my bedroom key, usually on a specific hook in the kitchen, had been replaced on a slightly different one. I found a partial fingerprint on the safe that didn't match mine or Sophia's. Most incriminating, my phone bill showed 3 calls made from my home phone to an unrecognized number during the reunion. James traced the number to a locksmith in a neighboring town. The pieces were assembling, painting a picture of calculated planning rather than spur-of-the-moment crime. Mark had planned this, likely weeks in advance, using the reunion as his cover. The challenge remained: how to confront him with irrefutable evidence he couldn't laugh off or dismiss. After nearly a week of diligent information gathering, I was prepared to set a trap. James advised that while circumstantial evidence was strong, something more concrete was needed: catching Mark in a lie or getting him to incriminate himself. As it stood, it was still my word against his. That night, I composed a carefully worded social media post, tagging family members, including Emily. It announced the installation of hidden cameras throughout my house post-incident for increased safety, claiming that everything was now being recorded. I also alluded to finding interesting evidence in an envelope that I would be taking to the police the following day, adding cryptically, sometimes the truth has a way of coming out when you least expect it. It was a complete fabrication. No hidden cameras, no mysterious envelope. But Mark didn't know that. I posted it and waited. Within 15 minutes, my phone rang. Mark's number appeared on the screen. I nodded to myself, took a deep breath, answered, and simultaneously activated the voice recorder app James had installed. I adopted a casual tone. Mark's voice, lacking its usual smugness, asked about my online post and the mentioned evidence. I kept my tone neutral, suggesting I was investigating. He pressed, asking what exactly I was investigating, nervousness creeping into his voice. I replied that I thought he knew. The missing money. He paused, reiterated his denial, claiming we had been through this. I offered a non-committal sound, adding that the police seemed very interested in what I had found, pushing the bluff further to gauge his reaction. Police? You went to the police? His voice rose slightly, threatening defamation lawsuits. The threat, which might have shaken me a week earlier, held no power now. I calmly stated it wasn't a false accusation if it was true and evidence didn't lie. He demanded to know what evidence I thought I possessed. I suggested we discuss it with Emily present, or with the police. His choice. Another longer pause. When he finally spoke, his tone had completely shifted. He suggested we had gotten off on the wrong foot, acknowledging my financial difficulties and offering to help with a loan for Sophia's college expenses. The sheer audacity of offering me my own stolen money as a loan ignited my fury, but I maintained my composure. I thanked him for his generosity, mentioning a meeting with the home security company later that day for system upgrades. I saw a flicker of concern on his face as he inquired about the nature of the upgrades. I casually mentioned adding indoor cameras and improving recording quality, then excused myself to get something from the kitchen. In the kitchen, I deliberately placed my purse, slightly open with the edge of an envelope visible, prominently on the coffee table before returning. I resumed the conversation, noting the security company might even be able to retrieve older footage, implying the system might not have been offline after all. This continued fiction made him visibly uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, proposing a theory that perhaps one of the neighborhood kids had gotten in during the party while the back door was open. I countered that the money was in a safe, requiring a combination. I excused myself again, this time for the bathroom. As expected, upon my return, my purse had been subtly moved. After another minute of conversation, I checked my watch, mentioning the security company would be arriving soon. Mark immediately stood up, eager to leave. Before you go, I said, reaching for my purse, I should check if I have enough cash to tip the technicians. Opening my wallet, I feigned surprise. That's strange. I had $300 in here earlier today. I looked directly at Mark. Did you move my purse while I was in the bathroom, Mark? His face flushed. He vehemently denied it. Emily looked confused, asking what I was suggesting. I'm suggesting that Mark has a habit of taking money that doesn't belong to him, I stated, standing up, anger finally breaking through my calm facade. Just like he took the $5,000 from my safe during the reunion. Mark's laugh was forced, dismissing my claims to Emily. Mark, I said quietly, I know it was you. I have evidence. He scoffed, but fear flickered in his eyes. I described the security system, implying it wasn't offline as he thought, and mentioned a separate alarm triggered by accessing my bedroom door using the spare key from the kitchen bowl. Another bluff, but delivered with conviction that sowed doubt in his expression. You're making this up, he said, his voice lacking conviction. Am I? I moved towards the hallway, inviting him to see what the police thought of my evidence. On cue, Sophia's bedroom door opened, and James stepped out in his police uniform. John followed, Mark's face drained of color. "What is this? Some kind of setup?" James stepped forward, his expression professionally neutral, stating they had reason to believe he had illegally accessed my safe and taken money. Emily stood, pale, asking Mark what was happening. He looked frantically between us, claiming it was ridiculous, that we couldn't prove anything. "Actually," I said, picking up my purse, "the $300 I mentioned, I marked those bills before you arrived with special UV ink." I nodded to James, who produced a small UV light. "Should we check your pockets, Mark? Or would you prefer to empty them yourself?" Mark's composure completely collapsed. He looked at Emily, who had recoiled from him, her hand protectively over her growing belly. The weight of his actions, the potential loss of everything, seemed to crash down on him. "It was just sitting there," he said softly, barely audible. $5,000 in cash, not even in a proper safe. Anyone could have taken it, Emily gasped, realizing he was confessing. He insisted it was just a loan, claiming I didn't know how to manage money anyway, that he was going to invest it and return it with interest. He mentioned buying Emily a designer handbag with some of it. "By buying Emily a designer handbag?" I asked. His head snapped up. "How did you know about that?" "The same way I knew you took my money," I replied. "I paid attention." James stepped forward. "Mr. Davis, I need you to empty your pockets now." Defeated, Mark reached into his jacket and pulled out my $300. Slowly, he removed his wallet and produced more bills. "The rest is at home," he admitted, "in my office safe." Emily burst into tears, the conflicting emotions of sisterly love and recent betrayal wrenching her expression as she looked at me, apologizing, insisting she truly hadn't known. As James documented the confession and John comforted Emily, I felt no triumph, only profound sadness mixed with immense relief. The door that had opened that day had revealed ugly truths, but also a strength I hadn't realized I still possessed, the capacity to stand up for myself, something I had forgotten during the difficult years after my divorce. Mark's smirk was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had gambled everything, assuming I was too weak to fight back. He had been wrong. The weeks that followed were a complex mix of difficulty and healing. Mark returned the remaining money the next day, not just the $5,000, but an additional $2,000, claiming it was interest, though it was clearly an attempt to mitigate consequences. After extensive discussions with James, John, and even Sophia, I chose not to press criminal charges, primarily for Emily's sake. My sister was devastated, caught between the image of the husband she thought she knew and the harsh reality of his actions. She temporarily moved out of their home, coming to stay with me despite the initial awkwardness. One evening, sitting on my porch swing, the same one where we'd shared teenage secrets, she confessed she should have believed me, that she had made excuses for his behavior because she couldn't face what that implied about her own choices. I took her hand, acknowledging we had both stayed in difficult relationships longer than we should have out of similar fears. Resting her head on my shoulder, her hand protectively on her growing belly, she voiced her heartbreak at having a child with someone she couldn't trust. That difficult question sparked countless long conversations over the following months. Emily eventually filed for divorce, a painful decision complicated by her pregnancy. But watching her reclaim her agency and establish boundaries was incredibly inspiring. Mark, facing the loss of both his marriage and his reputation, sought therapy. Whether from genuine remorse or calculated image repair was unclear, but it was a step in the right direction. As for the money, the original $5,000 plus Mark's addition was used exactly as intended. Sophia and I took our college road trip that spring, visiting 5 campuses across 3 states. Seeing my daughter's face light up upon finding her ideal school, a mid-sized university with an excellent graphic design program that offered her a partial scholarship, validated every extra shift I'd worked. On the drive home from the final campus tour, she told me she wanted to study business too, expressing a desire to never be financially vulnerable as we had been after the divorce. Her words struck me deeply. I hadn't fully grasped how much my struggles had impacted her. I apologized if I had burdened her, but she shook her head, saying I had shown her resilience, and she had learned from Mark that money afforded power, a power she intended to always possess to make her own choices. My sharp, insightful daughter had extracted profound wisdom from our family's painful experience, wisdom I hadn't fully recognized myself. The incident permanently altered my relationships, but not entirely for the worse. Emily and I forged a bond closer than we'd had since childhood, supporting each other through her divorce and the birth of my nephew, Lucas, a happy baby who inherited my father's eyes and Emily's quiet determination. My parents, initially prioritizing family harmony above all, came to understand that sometimes confrontation is necessary to protect what truly matters. John and I developed a friendship extending beyond co-parenting, built on the respect that solidified when he supported me without hesitation. James and I started a monthly sibling dinner tradition that expanded to include cousins and eventually Emily once more. For my own growth, the woman who confronted Mark was fundamentally changed from the one who hosted that reunion. I had rediscovered my voice, reaffirmed my boundaries, and recognized my inherent worth. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It is essential. I learned that appearing weak to those who would take advantage doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a target. And perhaps most significantly, I learned that family isn't solely defined by blood or marriage certificates, but by who stands beside you when you fight for what is right. Today, nearly 2 years later, Sophia thrives in her freshman year at college. Emily is rebuilding her life as a single mother, with Lucas now a happy, babbling toddler. Mark has limited, supervised visitation. And while our interactions are strictly focused on Lucas, he treats me with a cautious respect, a stark contrast to the condescending smirks of the past. As for me, I've expanded my freelance design work into a small but growing business, recently hiring my first employee. The financial security I've built feels like a deeply personal victory, proof that Mark's assessment of me was entirely wrong. Sometimes, reflecting on that moment when the door opened and Mark's arrogant certainty crumbled, I feel a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also gratitude for the strength I unearthed and the true family connections that emerged from the wreckage of false appearances. The money didn't simply disappear and reappear. It became the catalyst for discovering who would stand by me when I needed them most. In the end, that knowledge is worth far more than $5,000 could ever be. Have you ever faced someone who refused to take you seriously, who tried to diminish or deceive you? How did you navigate that challenge? Share your experiences below. Sometimes, the most difficult battles we face are against those who make us doubt ourselves. But as I learned, trusting your intuition and rallying your true allies can make all the difference. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are stronger than you think, especially when facing those who underestimate you.